Hello, my name is Ian and I work at the Ford Public Library. Welcome back to another episode of the Maker Showcase. Remember, we post a new episode of the Maker Showcase every second Saturday of each month. I'm joined today by a maker that has overcome great odds and continued to be a maker and creator. I'd like to welcome John Bramblitt to the program today. Hi, John.
Hi there. I'm so glad to be here, Ian.
Excellent. I'm so happy to have you on here. I have to say that you are honestly a personal idol of me, but I'll put that to the side for the moment.
Oh my goodness.
Welcome you to the show.
Oh.
Tell everybody, if you would, what kind of maker you are.
I'm a painter. I'm pretty much a one trick pony. I paint for some reason in my crazy brain. Drawing and painting makes sense. It always has since I was little. I think I could draw before I could walk, and I've always been kind of a nerd. I've always been a big friend of libraries. I can't talk all of a sudden. But I've always gone in and looked up books on art, drawing, painting, and that's kind of stuck to me for my whole life.
That's really awesome. Now I have to clue everybody in on something that they may not know. You are a painter, but something that fascinates me is you're blind. You're a blind painter.
Oh yeah, I forgot to mention that. Yeah, I don't. It's funny. Whenever you live with something like that, it kind of escapes your. I don't know. You don't think about it all the time. But yeah, I lost my eyesight in 2001, and before that, I always drew. I loved to draw and with charcoal, pencils, all that sort of stuff. But I never painted. But in 2002, I started painting because it was a way that I could start getting back into art, back into drawing, but I could actually touch the lines because I could make, I could use paint that's thick and so it gave me a way to reconnect with my art, which allowed me to reconnect with life. Really, it was thank goodness for art, for making, for being able to create things.
Yeah, art, it seems to have a way of really invigorating people and bringing life into life, if I do say so myself. So this is something that is incredible to me, and I'm sure that our audience is kind of fascinated by this. So, I mean, I see some of the artwork surrounding you. How do you paint and how do you create such colorful works of art that you may not be able to see?
Whenever I first started, it was very simple sort of things. And this is, I'm getting older every day. So this was a while ago when I started, and it's been almost 20 years now that I started painting. And but when I first started, I was fortunate in that I already knew how to draw, and I was a student in college, and I knew how to do blueprints of houses, how to do a portrait of a person, how to do cartoon work. It was always drawing, but I knew composition. So my hands knew how to draw and my brain knew how to draw. So whenever the eyesight went, well, to be honest, I didn't know of any other blind painters or artists in the world. And there was one gentleman in Turkey, but I didn't know about him. And we do very different art, but I've since got to talk with him and everything. But at the time, I didn't know about all this. So I thought art was out of my life forever whenever the eyesight went. And I was so angry and I was so depressed. Whenever you lose your eyesight, it just, I don't know, for me, it was like all hope had left my life. I felt like there was nothing new I could do. There's nothing, I was a student in college, but I didn't see how I could actually would be able to do anything, and the wonderful thing is that you start learning all these different skills about how to redo everything. I mean, how to eat without getting food all over yourself most of the time, how to cook and but the main thing is how to get around, how to travel independently. And you start learning how to use a cane. And then later, like a guide dog, like I have a guide dog named Eagle, which is right now snoring down by my feet. She's a sweetheart. But you start learning how to travel across the city all by yourself, independently, just using a cane. And with cars and people and crossing streets all by yourself. And I thought, well, my goodness, if I could cross the street, using a stick basically, and all these new skills, surely I could also get across the canvas if I use the same ideas. So that's where I started getting back into drawing and art. But it was very, very simple sort of things. It was just like, there's no shading, there's no blending. All the drawings were very wrong. But I was so excited about them though, because even though they were misshapen and nasty, and like the first thing I drew was this little Buddha, because I had a statue of a Buddha in my house and I could feel it and touch it. And it took me all night to do this very simple line drawing of this Buddha that was only maybe like 5 inches big. And I had so much crumpled paper around me. It was like I was sitting in a white nest by the end of it. And I'm sitting on the floor doing this. And by the end of it, I had this weird misshapen Buddha, and it was horrible. It was probably the worst I've ever drawn. And I was more proud of it than anything I'd ever done in my life, because I know with art, if you can do it a little bit, then you can do it a lot. You just keep adding it. It's just baby steps with art. So I knew after that it was possible to start getting back into it. And I apologize for going off on a tangent. But it was that moment though, learning how to draw, learning different materials. And there's no one to teach me that. There was no blind painters around. Like I said, there was a guy in Turkey that was kind of messing around with it. So I didn't even tell people that I was trying this, because I thought they would definitely think I was crazy. I was already, depressed and stuff anyway. Figured people think like, oh, John's finally gone over the edge. Here we go. So I was just sort of doing this stuff at home after school, and I was a mess at the beginning of all this.
It's so amazing to hear, and I can't even imagine what type of journey that would be like. And it's amazing to hear about you were most proud of that Buddha because it kind of reinvigorated your ability to create art again. So that's quite amazing. So when you what were you going to college for, and what were you hoping to be?
Well, I was going to school because I wanted to be a professor. I thought, I love, I'm a huge nerd. I think I've already mentioned, but I love reading. I love writing. I love to write. And I thought it would just be so wonderful to be able to be surrounded by students and other people that were interested in learning. And I mean, I know everybody that goes to school isn't a huge nerd and excited about homework and all that, but it's also a place though where you're just surrounded by ideas and people that are just excited about new ideas and new concepts. And I drew every day. Like I would paint and draw every day. I have all my life. And for some reason, it's the way my brain works. I never thought art would be my career. Art was just my way of thinking, really. And then I would write, and writing was what I thought I would share more with people than the painting or the drawing. And art was just my way of not going crazy, of losing my mind especially after the eyesight, all the anger and the depression. But yeah, I thought I would teach. So you never know, there's so many of my friends, or so many people I know that will they'll go to university and they get a degree, and then what their actual job is so different than what their actual degree is.
Yeah, that definitely happened for me. I have a technical theater degree. I never thought I would be working in libraries. So absolutely, that happens, I think, just about to everyone. And you say that you thought you were going to be teaching, and I don't know about this, but I assume that you do end up teaching people who have lost their eyesight or have some sort of disability. I'm sure you have reached out to that community, haven't you?
Yeah, and it's funny. I started working with museums before I left college, and I've worked with the Guggenheim, the Metropolitan, the DMA for the last 15 years, I guess. I worked with them, and the Meadows Museum and Amon Carter, and gosh, another museum in Fort Worth. I swear my brain is like Swiss cheese. But museums all over the country, and schools, universities, and it's been quite a ride, because I went from thinking that no one would ever want to see a painting of mine. It wasn't even an idea of mine to show a painting, because I was so certain. It was like, why would anybody ever want to see a painting of mine? I mean, good goodness, it's just keeping me from losing my own mind. So, and then it went from that to me wanting to share my artwork, because I wanted to meet other artists. I wanted to meet other makers that were so obsessed with what they did. Like, it gave their life meaning, and that's what I wanted to do. So that's why I started showing. But even then, I didn't tell people I was blind. I would do a show opening, and I'd try to meet the other artists and stuff, but then I wouldn't really hang around, and I wouldn't be there. And then, but the shows did well. Like, they sold really well. And then it got out that I was visually impaired. And so some stories started to be written. And then I started to be contacted by some different nonprofits and charities they're like, hey, can you come and teach a workshop? Can you give a talk with our clients, with our people? So I started getting pulled into teaching from that, which was incredible. And it was the best thing that could have ever happened to me, because I still felt very isolated. And I have to say that I wasn't isolated. I had a family that loved me, that cared for me. I had friends around me that were the most incredible people. But on the inside, I just felt very alone. I didn't feel like, um, it's almost like, it was almost like there had been a death in the family. Like this future that I had for myself was suddenly gone, and I was mourning it. And and it was almost like we didn't even have a funeral. So I just felt kind of bereft. And but then I would be able to travel, and I would start meeting soldiers that had PTSD, and children that had autism, and adults with Alzheimer's. And then museums are wanting to be more inclusive. So I started being contacted by all these different museums that were saying, hey, can you come and help teach? Can you come do workshops? Can you help us design programming? So I started to be a consultant for museums, and we started doing that. And oh my goodness, it opened up the world for me. And so even before I left college, that's what I started doing. And I kept thinking like, oh, well, I'll go back and I'll get my master's, because okay, oh, I got this really great thing. I get to go to Holland, and I get to meet the prime minister, and I'm going to do this thing, and we're going to set this stuff up, and it's going to, but then next semester, that's when I'm going to start it. And then something else would come up, and I'd go like, well, and so I was just having a really good time. But a big part of that too was that I lost my eyesight because of my health. I had severe epilepsy since I was 2. I had kidney problems, already had a kidney out, had neurological problems. I ended up getting Lyme's disease. But my seizures and the Lyme's disease went undiagnosed for a long time, and my seizures were just out of control. And it was bad enough to where I was going into status epilepticus, where it was like I was getting hit in the back of the head over and over, is what my neurologist described. And I lost about 40% of my hearing and all of my vision. And we didn't see it getting any better. I mean, the neurologists were like, we don't know what, like the prognosis for me having a long life was not good. It was like very, very short, seemed to be the way it would be. And so that kind of changed the way I thought. I thought, I want to do things that are meaningful, that I really enjoy, that makes me feel really good, and that I feel like is a positive, so why not do that? And that's, so if a piece of art sold and someone say, oh, I like this painting, I would like, how much is it? I would look and say, oh, you don't have an electric bill. It's this much. You can pay this electric bill. And it just kept me being able to do what I wanted to do, which was go and talk to other people and be able, and I started doing workshops, and 99% of the people that I teach at workshops don't have a disability. They don't have any kind of problem. That's the best sort of thing, because I go there with my guide dog Eagle, and we talk and we learn all these different new ways of painting, of doing art. It's just been such a blessing. And about two years ago, I was made a cultural ambassador for the United States, and where they'll take an artist and they'll send the artist out to spread the culture of the U.S. and their art and stuff. And of course, that's right when COVID hit. So the only kind of country that I actually physically went to was Brazil. And then after that, it's been a lot of Zoom calls and stuff. But it was a big honor though, and I've been able to work with blind services with about 7 different states, and with Brazil. And Brazil handles blind services really for all of South America. So being able to do materials and things that go out all over there. And I don't know, Ian, it's funny how when you're younger and you have this idea and you think you have things worked out with life, and you think, oh, I'm gonna go to school and I'm gonna get this degree and this and that, and I'm gonna do this. And then life just throws you a curveball. And I'll get back to you just really quick. I just want to say this one thing. I thought whenever I lost my eyesight, I thought it made me different than everyone else. It made me feel very isolated and alone. But whenever I was able to travel around and start meeting people that had other problems and get out of my own head a little bit, I realized that everybody has something in their life that's bigger than they are, that seems insurmountable. And it may not be a disability. It could be, it could be a bad relationship that they're in. It could be the death of a loved one. It could be a job, a career that is just sucking the life out of them. It could be a lot of different things, but it seems bigger than you are. So I came to the realization that me losing my eyesight, it actually made me more like everyone else. And that made me feel so much better, because I didn't feel alone anymore. I felt like, we're all in this together and we can all help each other out. And I love sharing that what really helped me was actually my art. the ability to make things. Whenever you're depressed and you're angry and you feel like you can't do anything positive, to be able to sit down and actually make little changes that build on each other, and every day you end up with something more than what you started with, then you stop lying to yourself. You stop being able to say that, I can't make a change. I can't make something different. Even if it's small, it's something. And that,
Absolutely.
can mean a lot.
Yeah, yeah. And that's what I love about the maker community is
Sorry, I talked a lot.
No, not at all. No, the maker community is awesome because it really can inspire. First of all, there's collaboration. There's a lot of collaboration between makers of all kinds, really. And that's why I feel so passionate about the maker community, because if I do say so myself, the maker community is pretty awesome. So it's awesome to hear that you've been able to share your talents. And you said that you were hoping to become a professor, but it sounds like in a strange way you kind of did, but without having to be with one institution. You are obviously global and being able to share your passion with the world. So I think that's pretty awesome. And I again, the maker community is just awesome.
I agree. And it's one of those things too, where it's wonderful. One of the wonderful things about art creating is that you never reach the end of it. You're never like, oh, I'm an expert now, I know it all, yay. I mean, there's always something more to learn. There's always something more to do. There's another technique, there's this or that. And always pushing yourself, it just helps you grow. And about five, I'm always trying to push my art. About 5 years ago, I did my first mural, and I didn't realize I was the first blind person to make a mural. And I did it for World Sight Day, and it was a company. It was an international company that wanted to do something big for World Sight Day to celebrate it. And they asked me if I could do a mural in New York, and I was like, well, of course I can. What do you, but all my painting, because I'm blind, I have techniques that I use where I can touch and feel the paint. So touching and feeling is it's the way that I do it. I use my hands to replace the work my eyes used to do. And it sounds hard, but really, whenever, like, if I explain it, or if you ever do a workshop where I blindfold you and I can show people how to do it, they go like, oh my goodness, okay, I get it. But so there's techniques, but it's hard. Like I've done 4-story murals. I painted 737. We've done all kinds of different things. But that first one, though, I didn't realize that a blind person had never done a mural. And so what better to try something new in front of an international film crew, when they're there filming your every moment,
Oh my gosh, goodness.
But all the kids that I work with, I always say, you've got to be ready to fail. Like, you've got to fail as an artist. Failing is the best thing you can do. Like, you need to fail often. And if you're not failing enough, then you're not trying enough new things, really. It wasn't a failure, though. It worked. Like, I worked out how to do it before I got there, and I was working on different schemes. So it actually worked, thank goodness, because, as much as failing is good for your art, it's not fun, especially if you have a camera in your face.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Failing in front of audiences is never, it's a terrifying experience. So I can't even imagine what that must have been like. So,
but it turned out to be a great thing, though.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Let's go back to, as a kid, what inspired you to start drawing?
Drawing is kind of a weird thing for me. Like, I don't know what it is, but I think I could draw before I could walk. Like, I would scribble things, and I love to write. But even before I write a story, I draw it out first. Like, even as a child, like if I was working on English, something or another, I would draw it out to make sense in my head so it would flow right. And for some reason, it was just my way of understanding. But I never, I learned every kind of drawing that I could, but I never painted. And I revered painters, though. I was like the armchair quarterback for painters. Like, I didn't think I would be good at painting, and I didn't have enough courage to try something that I thought I would be bad at. But drawing, I love. So I could do the blueprints for a house. I could do all these different things. But painters, I would read about Monet and the way that he would set up his studio and his palette, the way he would never use black. And I would be like, oh my gosh, that's interesting. Why wouldn't he use black? And Picasso and Van Gogh, all these different painters, and just read about them and loved it. But I guess it's the same way as, like, if you love music and you listen to music, but maybe you don't play an instrument, but you love it, and and so that's the same way that I was about that. I couldn't play that particular instrument, but I just adored it. It kind of sung to me, and but it wasn't until losing my eyesight that I really felt like I didn't have anything to lose. I mean, I was at a zero, And as bad as not having anything to lose is, you also don't have anything to lose. So, you can literally do whatever you want with your life. You can go do anything. There are no bad things that can happen to you. And that's,
Yeah,
it's kind of a liberating kind of thing. So I would
absolutely.
go to school for about, 3-4 hours a day. I was still learning to read and write again. I was learning Braille and the screen readers and stuff that I'm using like today on the computer. So I had no homework. So yay, even though I was in school, I was getting incompletes in all my classes. And but I was relearning to read and write. And then I would go and make sure I would be around people because for your mental health, you need to be around people. So I would make so that was a firm rule. I knew that from being a child growing up and having disability, having problems. And then I would only sleep maybe 4 hours a night. And the rest of the time, like 14, 16 hours a day, I would paint. And I would do that every day, 7 days a week. And even today, I still paint for the same reasons. And I still paint 8 to 10 hours a day, unless I'm traveling. I would paint more, but I have a son and I have a wife, and my studio is set up with couches and everything. So even though I'm painting, a lot of times we're in here, like I'll put a movie on or I'll hang out with my son while he's doing other things. And so it's, I don't know, it's, you've got to have balance in your life. My balance
Absolutely.
is painting most of the time, but then I'm making sure there's family.
Yeah, the balance is very important no matter what kind of life you have. It is very important to have that balance going on. So is there anyone or anything that has really inspired you? I can't even really, that's a hard question for me to ask because there's so many possibilities out there. But is there anything that has really inspired your work or inspired you?
Oh my goodness, Ian! Like you inspire me right now because you're taking the creative effort to be able to do this, to put this together, and to reach out to other people and to inspire them. And I think that's brilliant. I love actually being around other artists, and I love being in that space where whenever you can actually touch and feel another artist's work, and have them describe to you how their thought process, how did they put it together, why did they make this choice and not this choice, and of course I'm really driven to painting, but I admire so much other artwork. All artwork. Like I said, I'm just a one-trick pony. For some reason, painting makes sense to my brain, but it's so wonderful to be around makers of all different kinds, and I get so inspired from that. And inevitably, if I go to a show, if I go somewhere and somebody's describing the artwork to me, if the people there are nice enough to let me touch their artwork, which is brilliant, then I come back to the studio and I'm just fired up, and I'm thinking like, oh my goodness, if I get to go and do a talk or a workshop with a group, and I get to meet everyone. I mean, using my talks and my workshops and all this I do with museums, or if I do a lot of speaking and I do it with businesses. They're very hands-on. Like, it's not so much me just talking there. I pull people up. I make them paint. I make them do everything. And just that interaction with people, it just fires me up. And I love to try to take that. Like today, after we're done, I have a painting over here on the, it's off camera, I think, but that I'm going to be working on. So I'm going to take the energy from having this discussion with you, and I'm going to try to pour it into that.
That's awesome. Yeah,
So,
that would.
Thank you very much for the energy that's about to go into this painting. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. I'm happy to be a part of that. When I was in college, I was a technical theater major with focus in light design. And my professor always told us, my lighting professor, he always told us, take whatever is going on in your life and kind of funnel that energy, even if it's bad energy, funnel that energy into your work, because it can really fire up that passion in you and create some really amazing pieces of work. So it's awesome to hear that you take those creative juices that are formed whenever working with other artists and throw them into your work as well.
Yeah, Ian, that's so brilliant. I'm so glad you brought that up, because that's what's one of the most wonderful things is, if you have a bad time, if you're having a bad day, you can take that energy and put it in your art, and it's just energy. It's just fuel that you can burn. And that's one of the things. The first time I ever gave a talk at the Metropolitan in New York, and I was there with my first guide dog, and and I was so excited to be there. And I thought, I'm going to look up other artists with disabilities or other artists that have problems. And I thought, this is going to be a really short list. It'll be great. Maybe I can find some. And I started doing some research, and it became easier to find an artist that didn't have a disability or didn't have some sort of problem that they were trying to face, whether they were separated from their society, maybe, for whatever reason. And And it makes complete sense. Whenever you go to a museum and you're looking at the artwork, most of the artwork there is done by people that are struggling with one thing or another. And it makes complete sense, because why in the world would you put all the energy to make art? It's hard. It takes a lot of energy. It takes a lot of time. Why would you do that if you didn't have something to say, that you weren't trying to communicate with another person? So you're taking all these bad feelings, all these hard times, this yearning just to communicate with other people, to connect with them. So it made complete sense that all these people in the museums that we're revering, we're looking at, did have a problem. They did have a struggle. The only difference, I think, and one of the wonderful things to be alive today, is that if you are an artist with a disability, if you are an artist who's struggling with something, it's okay. And there's more understanding there. I can say I'm a non-visual visual artist and not try to hide it, because people won't think there's something wrong with me, that oh, he's sick, or there's a problem. I'm not sick. I just need my hands to do the work that my eyes used to do. It's an adaptation. It's something that it changes the way that I do art. And the wonderful thing about art is that the more you think outside the box, the more that you come from an abstract angle, the better it is. The more you have to say, the more interesting it is. So, the more struggles, the more people that come into art and they're communicating their own ideas and their own, the complexities of their life, the better the art is and the more interesting it is. It's just,
Absolutely.
it just makes it better.
Absolutely. And you talk about adaptations, and I think that, and that's with everybody in every aspect and every portion of aspect of their life. I don't know if I said that correctly, but anyways, basically, no matter what you're doing, you're making adaptations to make things work. So I think you hit the nail on the head with that part right there. What do you hope to do? I mean, we've talked a lot about the past and everything. What are you hoping to do as you move forward into the future?
I feel like everything I've done has been a nice prep work. Like, it's been a nice instructional way to get to where I am now. So now I really feel like it's time to get busy and actually start doing some interesting stuff, and so I feel very excited. And so I'm wanting to do bigger paintings, thicker paintings, just things that are communicating, hopefully on a better level of what I feel. I read once that Hemingway said that every day when he started to write, his goal was just to write a true sentence, like one true sentence. And every day that I try to paint, I try to do a true painting. I try to put down exactly how I feel in there in a way that maybe someone out there will see it, or they'll feel it, or they'll come across it in some way, or have it described to them and understand exactly that same feeling and be able to communicate that. So that's what I'm hoping. I'm hoping to make clearer pictures that with more understanding, a clearer connection. And I'm also wanting to open an art space, and we've been trying. COVID's made it hard. So we were ready to start, but now we're waiting, because I want it to be an art space where I can bring in all kinds of different artists, all kinds of different makers. And it's engineered in a way where we don't have to sell the art to make the art space work. And that's a big thing, because I want to bring in artists who aren't in the usual gallery system, and really show some new talent out there, and be able to, and have it just be a wonderful, happy place that people want to go to and just hang out and actually live with the art for a bit, actually spend an afternoon and not be like, oh, I love working with museums, but oh my goodness, they're so sterile. You walk in and it's like you've walked into a church and everybody's really quiet and they're reverential, you almost expect to hear monks chanting.
Oh my goodness.
It's funny because the workshops I do with museums, we go through and everybody's laughing and having a good time. And we have all kinds of things that I do with museums, and it's a lot of fun, and it's not quiet, but it's a good time. So
yeah,
I'm hoping to do some of that, and I'm hoping to, just really throw myself into the art even more and meet more artists. That's one of the things. That's something I miss with COVID, is that I'm not able to be around as many artists as I used to be able to. So it's opening up a little bit. But, we all have to be safe, and I don't want to get anybody sick, and I don't want to be a problem or anything. So And I'm all about touching. So, it's hard now in this COVID time where you're like, oh my gosh, you're not supposed to touch anything.
Yeah, yeah. COVID
So,
has been COVID's interesting because it has caused a lot of problems, but by the same token, there have been a lot of opportunities that have come from COVID and given us this silver lining. This whole series was intended to be in person when I first started it. I first started it at the beginning of COVID. And then we had to move it online. So I've been able to interview people from around the world, which has been great. And I wouldn't have had that opportunity except for COVID happened. So it's interesting how it's opened some doors while other doors have had to close during this time. And I'm hoping that soon all doors will be open again and we'll be able to meet up and have fun and get inspired by each other again.
oh, Ian, you are so great, man. That's such a positive look on it. And you're absolutely right. I used to fly 2 or 3 times a month going to give talks and workshops. And since then I do a lot of Zooms, and I've been able to go all over the place because, it's much cheaper. You don't have to get on an airplane. It doesn't take hours to get there. And you can just, you just put on, like, underneath the shirt is a really painty shirt that I had on, right, because I was painting. So it's easy. You can put on a button shirt and you look, kind of presentable. Gosh, I swear my brain. Yeah, you're right. So that is kind of brilliant.
It's been absolutely great. So if somebody is interested in getting started in painting or art in general, what advice would you give to them, and what kind of supplies should they look for?
That's a great question, because whenever you go into an art store and you go down the painting aisle, you are barraged with choices. There's so many different kinds of paint. There's brushes, and you look at a brush and you say, well, this one little tiny brush is $30. Like, do I need this to be a great artist or an okay artist? Or, and you really don't. It's start off with paints that aren't very expensive. The only difference between a student grade quality is, say, like for acrylics, I love acrylics. I started with oils, but I've gone over to the dark side. I'm all acrylics now, and I love them because of the different mediums you could add with the paint, because you can change the way the acrylics work. And acrylics can be a lot cheaper than oils. It depends on what you get. You can always spend more if you want. There's always that option. But with acrylics, so there's mediums I can add to it to make it into like a watercolor. I can make it work like oil paint. I can make it work like a putty, or even so hard that I can carve it. And there's this huge range so it gives me a lot of flexibility. And because I work with touch and texture to be able to understand color, because I make different colors feel different, acrylics are wonderful. But they're great because they can be cheaper. Some of the mediums are very expensive, but you don't have to spend a lot of money. And one nice thing about acrylics too is that you can paint on canvas, but you don't have to. You can also paint on paper. There's watercolor paper, there's acrylic, there's papers for that. Just regular kind of paper. The thicker, the better, though, so it doesn't kind of warp up on you and all that.
Sure. Yeah.
And the main thing is, don't feel like you need to have a painting done. The best thing I ever did to myself, and know this, the people who are creative are often the nicest people you ever meet, except on themselves. They're usually really hard on themselves. So every mistake they make is just, it's blown up in their mind. The nicest thing I ever did was I said that whenever I was starting to learn how to paint, this is after I've drawn for years and years and years, but I was starting to learn how to paint, that I wouldn't judge any painting I did for a year. I had an entire year. I couldn't judge it. It didn't matter if the painting was good or bad. It wasn't even part of the equation. That was so hard to do, though, because even from the first stroke that I was trying, I thought like, oh, there's no way this is going to turn out. Oh my goodness. And I thought, oh yeah, I'm not allowed to think that. So I make a few more strokes. And I'm like, what am I doing? This is real. Oh yeah, I'm not allowed to think that. And so you start to develop this habit. And I thought, because really what's important about the artwork is the process. It's the doing of it. And every time that you're making a mistake, you're learning. So you have an entire year to learn. And the wonderful thing is that for me, that made me love the process of it. And whenever I make a mistake in painting, I don't feel bad about it anymore. Actually, my favorite part of my studio is this giant rack, and it's an ever-growing rack. And I call it the rack of shame, because it's just paintings that didn't work out and I wasn't able to fix them. But I've learned so much from that, because every painting over there has a lesson in it. And I've never made that mistake again. Like, I've learned how to adapt from that. And I love art. I love learning about art. So everything over there is a lesson that's pushed me forward. And then if I do a painting and it turns out it's great, that's great too. That's wonderful. And whether it turns out or it doesn't, I had the process of it. I still paint today for, when I first lost my eyesight, I still had severe epilepsy. All this was going on. Painting made it where I focused I just had to focus on the paint on the end of my paintbrush. I wasn't worried about anything in the past. I wasn't worried about anything in the future. I could live in the moment, and it made me feel better. So all the time that I was painting, it was like taking a little mini vacation, and I wasn't allowed to judge it. So I was taking even more of a vacation. And that's still the same reason that I paint today. So whether or not a painting works out, I don't care. It doesn't matter, because I still have a really good day with it. Like I end up feeling better that day. If the painting doesn't turn out, it's a commission, I know what to do to correct it next time, and if, hopefully maybe there's been some commissions where it's like, gosh, I'm 3 or 4 paintings in, like I keep whiting it out. White paint is the painter's best friend. You can always white something out. But, and if it does turn out, you're like, yes, because the wonderful thing about a painting is that once it's done forever. It doesn't matter how long it takes you to get there.
Well, I like,
just don't tell people. It's a secret.
Well, I like how you look at it as a vacation, and like turning off your brain from thinking about it critically, and having that time limit set on it, so that way you kind of set yourself up so you're not criticizing yourself at every single movement. Even if you're not a painter, I in my light design, I definitely criticize myself for a lot of different decisions, or in my quilting, or I think we all have that habit of being way too hard on ourselves.
Man, you quilt? That's awesome.
Yep,
Man, that is awesome.
That is another one of my hobbies, is quilting. So it's funny how makers seem to have their main kind of talent, but then they have other offshoots of that in a way.
That isn't that true? That's brilliant. Yeah, I can't quilt, but I love it, and I love the history too. It's just such a rich history for that art form. It's just incredible.
Absolutely. Well, John, I want to thank you so much for joining me today. It has been such a pleasure talking with you today. Where can people find you online if they want to learn more about your artwork?
Oh, Ian, my last name is Bramblitt, Bramblitt, and that's on Instagram or Facebook. And I do a live stream every Tuesday at 8, where I'm just in the studio painting. And we and the best part about that is the chat, because people will come in and they'll say, how do you mix colors? How do you do this? So we're able to talk with people, and like you said, all around the world, because it's the internet. But also, I just hung in Fort Worth at the Metro. I did some work with the rail station, and at the Metro rail station, it's just been put up like this week, where all the paintings in that station are mine. Like, you have the, like the benches that you sat at, and it has a glass booths around it.
Yeah.
Well, all the artwork that are set into the glass are paintings of mine that I did for Fort Worth. And that's just come up. So if anybody happens to be traveling through, and they're all kind of whimsical, happy paintings, because I figure when you're traveling, you want something that's more relaxing and funny. Maybe it'll make you laugh, and for the kids too, because I don't know, kids and trains, it's just a magical experience. I want kids to come through and go like, oh my gosh, that's really cool.
That's so
at Fort
awesome.
Worth, I have that. I love Fort Worth, and I'm so happy to be able to do that. But yeah, online, it's just my last name, or if you forget my name, if you type in blind painter on Google, I'll pop up.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining me today. And I'm definitely going to be checking into that live stream. I didn't know about that, so I'm definitely going to be checking into those.
Oh, it's silly. It's really silly, Ian. But I would love to have you there. If you are, please say hi. I'd love to chat, man. I've had such a good time with you.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for joining me. And don't forget, everybody, we do the Maker Showcase interviews every second Saturday of the month. So don't forget to come back next month to see my next interview. Bye, everyone.